The man looked terrified, as if he had discovered something unusual, just as he leaned in closer out of curiosity to take a better look. A sudden appearance of a strange bug startled Jarvis so much that he stumbled backward, only to accidentally step on a trap he had set earlier. He fell to the ground, writhing in pain, struggling to remove the trap, but he quickly realized it was impossible. Suddenly, a giant, fleshy ball dropped beside him. Jarvis looked up at the ceiling and was horrified to find it covered in similar fleshy balls. One of the balls fell directly onto his face. When Jarvis regained consciousness, he was horrified to find something wriggling inside his body. At that moment, Jarvis was overwhelmed with fear. Struggling, he opened the storage cabinet, rummaged for a handgun, and fired directly at the thing inside his body. It turned out this was an illegal plant cultivation site. To accelerate the plant's growth, they had unlawfully used steroids for irrigation. Unexpectedly, the leaked chemical liquid dripped through the floor to the lower level, landing on a tick egg, causing the egg to mutate, and the strange insect that attacked Jarvis was the mutated tick. However, this extremely dangerous place was unexpectedly visited by a group of unsuspecting students. Led by their teacher, they planned to hold a summer camp here. As soon as they entered the dormitory, Tyler noticed a giant insect egg. Out of curiosity, he poked it lightly with a coat hanger, causing disgusting mucus to ooze out. Other students gathered around to take a look, but they only felt grossed out and nauseated without taking it seriously. So, they simply closed the door and left. Little did they know that the larva that fell to the ground was wriggling incessantly. Later, Tyler and Melissa, a female student, went exploring in the jungle, but they also failed to notice that the trees were full of those eggs. As they walked and talked, Tyler suddenly froze, his face changing as if he had spotted something. He immediately stopped Melissa and warned her not to move. It turned out an insect egg had somehow latched onto Melissa's back. She felt a chill run down her spine in an instant. Tyler quickly used a stick to knock the egg off, but the moment it hit the ground, the egg grabbed the stick and vanished in an instant. What kind of creature was this? Melissa and Tyler were so scared that they quickly left the area. Frightened, Melissa and Tyler rushed back to the camp, telling the two teachers everything they had just experienced. However, the male teacher, Charles, dismissed their concerns, saying it was normal to encounter insects in the wild. Despite Melissa and Tyler repeatedly emphasizing that this bug was different, they were only met with ridicule and mockery from the teachers and their classmates. Seeing this, Melissa and Tyler didn't bother explaining further. Unexpectedly, the camp was soon visited by two uninvited guests, Sir and Jerry, whose sleazy appearances made it clear they weren't good people. Sir used a threatening tone to warn Charles, saying it would be best not to camp nearby, as there was a high chance of running into bad people, especially those who grow illegal plants. After delivering their warning, Sir and Jerry turned and left. The strange behavior of Sir and Jerry left everyone feeling uneasy. Yet, since they were already there, they decided to stay and continue with the camp. But that night, something terrifying happened. Panic suddenly realized his dog was missing. Unbeknownst to him, the dog had already been targeted by a mutated tick. The dog sensed something was wrong and bared its teeth, ready to attack. But in a single instant, the mutated tick struck. When Panic followed the sound to investigate, he found his dog lying on the ground, convulsing uncontrollably and letting out painful whimpers. Panic was both heartbroken and terrified. Before long, the dog let out its final breath and died in Panic's arms. Charles and Tyler arrived at the scene and hurriedly asked Panic what had happened, but Panic couldn't give them a clear explanation. Shortly after, the female teacher, Holly, came over. Seeing Panic inconsolable, she immediately tried to comfort him. Tyler, however, was certain that all of this was somehow connected to the strange insect eggs. The dog's death filled Panic with guilt. He blamed himself, thinking that if it weren't for this summer camp, the dog would still be alive. Overcome with anger, he stormed off alone. The next day, Charles decided to call the police, but the dog's death didn't seem to concern Sheriff Parker. After conducting an inspection, Sheriff Parker couldn't determine the cause of death. He simply advised them to take the dog's body to the town's veterinary clinic. Before leaving, Sheriff Parker asked Charles if he had seen a bald middle-aged man, as his family had reported him missing after failing to return home the previous night. Charles replied that he hadn't. After Sheriff Parker left, Charles and Tyler drove away from the campsite, taking the dog's body to the town's veterinary clinic. At the clinic, the veterinarian, Tates, examined the dog and found it had been bitten by something. She attempted to draw some blood for further analysis, but the syringe inexplicably got stuck. No matter how hard she tried, she couldn't pull it out, and the needle itself broke off inside the dog. Kate's replaced the needle and tried again. Suddenly, the seemingly lifeless dog convulsed violently, as if something inside its body was moving. Kate's, alarmed, gripped the syringe tightly and mustered all her strength to pull it out. Finally, she succeeded, but attached to the syringe was a horrifying insect. It turned out that a mutated tick had been parasitizing the dog's body. Before Kate's could question them about where they had been, the tick struggled free and fell to the floor. Despite having the syringe embedded in its body, the tick remained incredibly lively and attempted to escape. To prevent it from getting out, Charles quickly shut the door while Tyler stuffed a rag into the door gap. The tick, hiding in the shadows, seized the opportunity to leap onto Tyler's face, its claws gripping his mouth tightly and refusing to let go. Thankfully, Charles intervened in time to free Tyler. The tick tried to escape again but was crushed to death under Kate's foot. After dissecting it, Kate's confirmed that it was indeed a tick. However, she had never seen one this large before. Inside the tick's body, she discovered a strange, steroid-scented mucus. Kate speculated that the steroids had caused the tick to mutate. Once bitten, victims would be paralyzed, and in severe cases, might even experience hallucinations. Meanwhile, Panic, who had wandered off alone into the forest, was suddenly attacked by a tick. The mischievous tick crawled toward Panic's inner thigh, but fortunately, he managed to grab it in time, narrowly avoiding disaster. Panic smashed the tick with his fist, but his thigh immediately started bleeding profusely. The unbearable pain forced him to pull out a knife he carried and cut open his pants. To his horror, he found that the tick's head had burrowed into his skin. Although Panic successfully removed the tick, his right leg was severely injured, and he collapsed on the ground. When Panic regained consciousness, he found himself facing Sir and Jerry. Sir pulled out an illegal plant from his pocket and admitted that they were the criminals growing illegal plants in the area. He also revealed their intent to kill Panic to eliminate any witnesses. At the critical moment, Panic pulled out his knife again and stabbed Jerry's leg, using the opportunity to limp away. However, Panic didn't get far before accidentally stumbling into a trap and falling to the ground. Jerry, who had caught up, pinned Panic beneath him, holding a dagger in his hand. He prepared to deliver the killing blow. Jerry, who thought he had the upper hand, was knocked to the ground by a punch from Panic. As Panic furiously beat Jerry, Sir appeared with a shotgun and fired at Panic. The shot hit Panic in the abdomen, causing him to roll down the hillside. Jerry wanted to check if Panic was dead, but Jazz stopped him. The recent explosion had triggered a raging fire, forcing them to leave for safety. On the other side, Melissa and Kelly went to the pond to fish. It was their first time fishing, and surprisingly, they hooked a big catch. Kelly pulled with all her strength but couldn't budge the fishing line. Whatever they had caught must have weighed over 100 pounds. With no other choice, Melissa decided to get into the water to pull the line. The next second, however, it turned out to be Sheriff Parker from earlier that morning. Melissa, with Kelly's help, quickly scrambled back onto the shore. They hid nearby, panicking, and spotted a police car covered with branches. It was obvious this was a murder scene, and the likely culprits were Sir and Jerry. Melissa and Kelly didn't dare waste a moment and hurried back to the camp. Meanwhile, a couple had wandered off from the campsite to play hide-and-seek in the nearby woods. During their playful chase, Dee Dee accidentally stumbled into the same illegal plant cultivation site from earlier. To her surprise, in addition to the plants, the walls were covered with dense clusters of fleshy balls. Rather than feeling scared, she moved closer to examine them. It wasn't until she noticed wriggling insects inside the balls that she realized the danger and decided to leave. But as Dee Dee turned to go, she bumped straight into Jarvis, who was now infected by the ticks. Dee Dee was terrified, but Jarvis begged her for help. In her panic, Dee Dee tripped over something behind her and fell to the ground. Jarvis, his face twisted in agony, lunged at her, pleading with her to end his suffering. In the next moment, Jarvis's entire face suddenly burst open, and a tick latched onto Dee Dee's neck. Terrified, Dee Dee pushed Jarvis away and fled the warehouse in a panic. It wasn't long before Jarvis died. Dee Dee, who had escaped, was soon rescued by her boyfriend, Rome. However, after being bitten by the tick, Dee Dee began hallucinating and mistook Rome for Jarvis. Fortunately, Tyler and Charles had just returned from town and picked up both Dee Dee and Rome in their car. When Charles learned that Dee Dee had also been bitten by a tick, he immediately accelerated back to the camp. He was going to take the students away from here right away. but the forest fire had not only failed to die out, it had grown larger and was now spreading rapidly toward the campsite. Even more terrifying, all the horrifying ticks were driven here by the advancing flames. Their hopes of escape were instantly dashed. With nowhere else to go, Sir and Jerry also arrived outside the house. Hearing their pleas for help, Charles didn't hesitate and opened the door for them. However, Sir and Jerry had already been bitten by the ticks. After dealing with the ticks on their bodies, Sir, ever the vain one, adjusted his hair before thanking Charles profusely for saving them. What no one realized was that these two were not only responsible for killing Sheriff Parker but had also attacked their classmate. Panic. Sir and Jerry thought their secret would remain safe. But the next moment, there was a knock at the door. It was Panic, miraculously still alive. Sir and Jerry immediately panicked. Despite his severe injuries from the tick attack, Panic used his last ounce of strength to reveal that Sir and Jerry had shot him. At that moment, Melissa and Kelly also spoke up about finding Sheriff Parker's body and said he had been shot to death. At this point, Sir and Jerry had no choice but to reveal their true intentions. Sir shot Charles in the leg and threatened to throw them out to feed the lice if they didn't hand over the car keys immediately. Helpless, Holly had no choice but to hand over the car keys. Sir then tossed the keys to Jerry, instructing him to go bring the car around. But Jerry, terrified of the swarming ticks outside, refused to obey Sir's orders. Under Sir's threat with a raised gun, Jerry had no choice but to muster his courage and open the door. Holding a torch, he drove away the ticks outside, and with the help of a whip in his hand, he successfully carved a path through. However, as Jerry got into the camper van and prepared to start it, he was horrified to find a tick inside, which immediately bit into his neck. Jerry painfully tore the tick from his neck, but a powerful numbing sensation immediately swept through his entire body. He felt utterly drained, and within seconds, he began hallucinating. He mistook Sir, standing at the door, for Sheriff Parker, whom they had killed. Overwhelmed with fear, Jerry slammed his foot on the gas pedal, driving straight towards Sir. Amazingly, Sir survived, but the house was no longer safe. A tick crawled onto DD's head, and soon, a swarm of ticks rushed in, launching a frenzied attack. They tried to use the chaos to escape in the camper van, but Sir's gun wasn't about to let that happen. Desperate to survive, Sir demanded that the injured Charles lure the ticks away. Unexpectedly, his words enraged Melissa. Without hesitation, she charged at Sir, and the others quickly joined in. After a brutal struggle, they managed to incapacitate Sir, but the crisis was far from over. Panic, who had already died, suddenly began convulsing violently, as though undergoing some terrifying mutation. Realizing the threat, they fled to the attic and shut the door behind them. Sure enough, in the next moment, Panic transformed into a gigantic tick. The enormous creature devoured the barely conscious Sir in a single bite. The giant tick then turned its attention to the attic, setting its sights on Tyler and the others. To make matters worse, the fire had spread and was about to engulf the entire house. With no other choice, the group devised a plan to escape the attic. Tyler used a rope to safely reach the ground. Once on solid footing, he grabbed a broom, set it ablaze, and killed the ticks that swarmed toward him. Tyler immediately opened the camper van door and burned the ticks inside. As the giant tick was about to break through the attic door, Tyler drove the camper van to the base of the house to pick up the remaining survivors. Seeing this, everyone quickly ties strips of cloth to the windows and starts to transfer one after the other. However, an accident happened. When it was finally Rome's turn, the giant tick burst through the door, biting Rome's leg and dragging him back into the room. Hearing his cries for help, Tyler climbed back up to save him, while Melissa quickly lit another broom and tossed it to Tyler. Just as the giant tick lunged at them, Tyler managed to block its attack with the flaming broom. Without hesitation, he shoved the burning torch into the tick's mouth. Tyler and Rome narrowly escaped and immediately drove the camper van away at full speed. At that moment, the fire ignited a gas line outside, triggering a massive explosion. The massive explosion leveled the entire house, reducing it to rubble and blasting the giant tick into countless fragments. However, safely back in the city, they remained completely unaware that a fully intact tick egg was hidden beneath the camper van, setting the stage for an even greater crisis to descend upon the city.